All right, guys, what we are doing today is doing a new and updated hero or leader and mini tier list. We're going to talk about all the minis in the game. We're going to talk about all the leaders in the game, and we're going to rank them for the new PvP meta, because last weekend, the entire meta shifted when the towers changed in Warcraft Rumble. We went from having simple, single target, physical damage towers to AoE, Dragon's Breath Cone elemental damage towers, and with that brought a shift in terms of leaders and minis that were good. So we're going to go through the leaders first, and we're going to talk through each of them, and we're going to rank them. That'll be the first half of the video. Second half of the video will be minis. So let's start off. Baron. Still in S+ tier, in the God tier. The reason being is, although Baron himself got a little weaker to the towers, it doesn't matter, because he still has Chill of the Grave, and that is an incredibly broken mini. He also has really good upper deck slots that just suit a lot of good meta units right now. And so Baron in general still remains a super, super strong mini. Not much more to say about it. Chill of the Grave is broken and Skeleton Mages are broken. So that's all I can say. Blood Mage Thalnos. I think Blood Mage Thalnos is meta. I think he's good. I don't think he's very good, but I think he's good. I think like the unit itself has got better with the current update because he can tank Dragon Towers. There is a world where someone finds about Blood Mage Thalnos deck that kind of puts him between meta and very good. But he's incredibly playable, and I will be having a video about Blood Mage Thalnos coming out tomorrow, because I found a deck that is really good. But do I think it's the best deck to have ever have existed? Can it beat Baron consistently? Maybe not. That's the problem with it. You really have to compare these leader decks to sort of other decks that are super meta right now. And although Blood Mage Thalnos as a core unit is quite good, his talents aren't particularly fantastic and don't really stack up to some of the other leaders in the meta. So he's okay. He's meta. He's playable. Solid. Maiev, still incredibly strong. One of the things that makes Maiev so good is that in almost every deck, you're going to have to run some kind of unbound package that is going to pressure the central chests or pressure the gold mines. And in a lot of those decks, you are making space for those units outside of things that you'd maybe want to have in your deck. With Maiev, you just want all the unbound minions in your deck because that's what her entire kit revolves around. And Dark Iron Miner is super strong. Safe Pilot is great, Quillbore is great, etc. And that kind of puts Maiev in a strong position anyway. So even though the new tower changes do not benefit her, they detect her stealth, and the AoE elemental damage kind of one-shots her, she's still actually a pretty strong control unit. She still has a big AoE unstealthing damage attack, and she's very good at controlling central eco chests. And you can win the game through Skeleton Party with Corpse Run. You can win the game through pressure with Quillbore plus Safe Pilot. You can win the game through loads of different ways, and Maiev still remains a very, very strong leader. Cairn is super good on the current update. The reason being, and there's one reason for Cairn being good. Not only is he a great control, or two reasons. Not only is he a great control unit with reincarnation, he also makes Darkspear Headhunter, or the Troll Headhunter, whatever you call it, really strong in the sense that he gives him 20% extra HP, and with Big Bad Voodoo, that man becomes a tower-taking machine. And so I think, like, Cairn in general, super strong on the current update, very, very good. Chalga. Look, I used to call Chalga literal garbage, but then I found this website, well, not found this website, I was directed to this website that has all of the top players on it. One of the top players that I know very well is called Porcenet. His most played PvP leader is Chalga, and he runs this deck. Now, there is a bit of a thought that goes into this deck, and I'd love for him to, if he's watching this, he might not be, to comment on the YouTube video and just sort of let people know kind of his rationale. But to me, a lot of the big mistake that people make with Chalga, including myself, is that they tend to run a very top-heavy deck. They tend to run like 2 big units or even 3 big units, and they hope to cheese them out for low cost and hope it wins off that one push. I guess what I'm seeing with this deck is that you're running basically 5 units that are similar cost. So you're balancing out the randomness of this deck, and you're adding in Huntress so you can cheese out alongside any of these units for a lower cost. And then a lot of these other units, these especially like Polymorph, Prowler, Safe Pilot, you wouldn't feel too bad playing 5 gold for them, because in the right situation they can be worth 5 gold. So that would be my thoughts on this Chalga deck. So I can't put Chalga in little garbage. I'm going to have to put her in below average because one of the top players is running her and making her successful. I don't think she's the best out there, but clearly there is a case for a Chalga deck to be made, and I might even try that Chalga deck myself. But It might be hard because my Chargos sucks. I haven't put any levels into her. Dracosath, not broken tier, I don't think, but I think very good. I think Dracosath has one deck that really works well for him with the Shaman, and you just run it down with Dracosath. He's got great damage. He becomes very tanky to the towers. Definitely a case to be made for Dracosath being strong, but not, I don't think, in the S+ tier levels of strong. I think he is very good. Do not think he's in the S+ tier levels of strong. Grom, I think Grom is on the lower end of meta. I think he is a weaker Horde leader, not as weak as Sneed, but a weaker Horde leader. I don't think he's as good as Cairn. And I think, like, overall, the decks that Grommash likes to run generally are going to get evaporated by the towers. But I think you can run Grommash. I think he's a pretty good melee unit for controlling areas. And I don't think he's terrible. But I just don't. I think he's sort of on the cusp of, like, below average and meta. I think Hogger right now is probably below average. The reason I say Hogger is probably a little bit below average is because now, do I feel bad putting Hogger in below average? I think he's probably meta in the sense that you can play Hogger, but he's definitely not as good as he was before. I think meta is like a wrong word for this tier. Let's just call it the okay tier. Like, he's good in the sense that he still has a win condition. You can still play to it, but you need to run him alongside something like a Quillbore or something that can draw aggro from a tower whilst he's running towards it. Outside of the towers, he's still got that incredible trading potential, still got, strong control. He's very fast. He can get to the chests really quickly. He can generate you a lot of eco. You don't necessarily need to win through Hogger, but he's definitely taken a hit because of the Dragon Towers. Dragon Towers evaporate Hogger. You used to be able to send Hogger at a guard tower, and he would just blow it up. And you could send him down the lane by himself, and he'd be an individual split push threat, and that would be a really big problem for the enemy to deal with. Now, if you send Hogger down a side lane as an individual split push threat, he just gets melted by the Dragon Towers, and that's a problem. Jaina, I think, is very good. I think she's overall a little better than Thalnos. The reason I think Jaina is better than Thalnos is just because of her passive ability. She's cheaper. She doesn't have AoE, obviously, so that makes her a little weaker versus certain matchups, but the power of her increasing spell levels is much, much more powerful than randomly getting a level for casting a spell, because Thalnos, even when you level him up, is still very vulnerable to getting blown up by just the simplest of unbound units. So I think that's something to be aware of. Whereas Jaina, you don't have any conditions around playing her. She has frost, she has frost, and she's ranged, and so she can still take towers by herself to an extent, but she increases the levels of all spells you play. Old Murkai, I think he's in the very good category. I don't think he's absolutely S+ tier insane. I think, like, he's very good, and there are lots of very good decks with Old Murkai, and I think, like, ultimately there is lots of flexibility and viability to him, but he just isn't quite as good as some of these S+ tier leaders. And the reason I'm being a little stingy is I don't want to put leaders on the level of Baron that I don't think deserve to be on the level of leader of Baron, because Baron is just inherently broken. So yeah, Sneed, I actually am going to go one further than below average and put Sneed in not good. Sneed right now, look, I could put him in literal garbage, but you can win games with Sneed. Sneed revolves around, you know what? F it. He's going in literal garbage. Sneed is literal garbage. He is a one-trick pony. Sneed needs to either take a chest or take a tower. The units that are classically good at taking towers, things like Frostwolf Rider, they're not super strong into these tower sets. Sneed is also super freaking slow, and he can't get to the towers, and versus most good players, he can't get to the chests. He's also armored, and he can't even take the towers by himself. So he gets to the chests or he gets to the towers, and either he gets melted by the tower, or he's so slow that the enemy unbound units have already taken every single chest on the map, and yes, Sneed can never get rolling. You've then got a 5-cost, slow piece of garbage that just can't do anything. So Sneed, I'm standing by it. Sneed is literal garbage. Rend, going in the very good category. I think, like, everyone, even myself, thought Rend would be significantly worse, but you can still play a very strong air game, and the reason you can play a very strong air game is actually dealing with Rend and air units is quite difficult. And so even though Rend himself isn't particularly strong at getting onto the towers, if you're running him with Scale and Steel, he can tank the towers for a little bit with his Drake before he gets taken off. And even then, he will charge into the tower and deal some damage. He also still gets value about spawning lots of different ranged minions. Air minions. You can still run well pegs, which are still broken. You can still play Drake and other associated flying minions that will work well. And a lot of top tier players are still playing Rend, so can't put him down in the terrible tier. A little bit better than Rend, I think, is Tyrion. I think Tyrion dropped off just a little bit. A lot of the slow decks that Tyrion likes to play, like the Footmen, are just not as good in the current meta because Footmen get evaporated by the current towers. There definitely are quicker paced Tyrion decks that you can play, but I think you just tend to get outpaced by a lot of the better decks in S+ tier. But Tyrion is very close to being good, and I think overall is a strong leader to play with. So yeah, I think like this would be my overall tier list for the current leaders in the meta. I'm maybe even feeling a little harsh by putting Bloodmage Thalnos in okay, but I just don't think he's sort of quite at the level of Jaina. But I think he's very viable, and I'm even going to make a deck. I'm even going to make a video talking about Bloodmage Thalnos and sort of playing a deck with him. Maybe he's better than sort of we've seen, but not many people are playing him, so it's difficult to tell. But there are lots of very good leaders and lots of very viable leaders. You've just seen a little bit of a shift from where it was previously, and this would be my kind of like takeaway tier list for leaders specifically. Right, now we do the minis. So let's talk a little bit about the minis, and we'll try and run through this a bit quicker because otherwise it will take forever. Abomination. Abomination goes in the okay category. He's slow, he's costly, and to be honest with you, he doesn't even stand up to the current towers that well. But there's still like viable decks that you can play with Abomination. He's still a threat that has to be dealt with. So I think he's kind of okay. He used to be, I think, a little higher than this, but ultimately, I think just takes a bit of a hit on the current tower setup. Chickens, not good. Don't know if I'm willing to put them in literal garbage because I have seen some chicken decks out there. People are definitely trying to make them work, but they get evaporated by the current towers. They're all melee. They can't get on towers to save their lives. Do you know what? Actually, they are literal garbage. Anybody that runs chickens should feel ashamed. I'm going to get some chicken enjoyers in the comments tell me that that's useless. Arcane Blast, very good. Not S+ tier because I don't think you need to run it in every single deck that you play, but I think like it has its uses, especially at one cost for revealing stealth. There are a lot of annoying stealth units right now, like Safe Pilot and Huntress with the Cloak talent. Plenty of reasons to run Arcane Blast to reveal stealth and get yourself good trades. I think this is Banshee. Banshee is very good. She is a good tech unit for a lot of decks right now. Can steal Rens, can steal Barons, can steal Cairns. So, Banshee can steal Stonehoof Taurens. Yeah, loads of things that I think Banshee is useful for. And so, therefore, I think Banshee goes in that sort of very good category. Baron is a leader, so I'm going to skip him. Batrider. I think Batrider's okay. I've seen some decks out there that run Batrider with the Flask talent. Where they use Batrider to run over the top of the bridge and drop flasks. That makes it difficult for people to control the bridge, which I think is actually a pretty smart way of playing Batrider. The only problem is you have to make space for her in your deck versus something else, which is hard to do for a lot of decks. I think the problem with Batrider is, she's a nice to have, but she's not a must have, is the way I'd put it. Blizzard. I think Blizzard is still very good. I think it's got its place, especially for controlling big pushes. It works nicely in conjunction with the current towers, and I think against still old Murkai decks, Blizzard will completely ruin your day. So I think it still makes sense to run Blizzard in certain decks. Still a very good spell. Can't in good conscience put it below very good. Chain Lightning, I think very good right now. I think Chain Lightning has proven right now to have strong use cases. Goblin Sappers. Chain Lightning is a great way to deal with it. Chain Lightning is another way of revealing stealth. It's a great way of resetting attacks. It's a great way of switching aggro, especially when we've got those dragon towers, like you Chain Lightning a dragon tower because you just slightly missed the beat on an unbound tank, and it will switch over to like your Quillbore or your unbound. So I think Chain Lightning is good and definitely a solid unit, a solid mini to include in a lot of decks right now. Core Hounds. Yeah, it's interesting because theoretically Core Hounds stock should have gone up. They're a resistant tank, but they're still just so slow. And that's the problem with these really slow units that aren't inherently a threat in their own right. They are they're a problem. You can't really get them off the ground to work. So I think like core hounds are not terrible, but they're not amazing either. You know, maybe an okay. Maybe there are decks out there that can utilize core hounds well. The problem is that you kind of want to run an elemental tank that you can give Frostwolf Shaman's buff to, and core hounds you can't give it to both of them, and they're really meant to be run as a duo pair. Also, there's not really any reason to split core hounds because you never really want to send melee minions over the bridge. You really only want ranged minions going over the bridge. So core hounds, yeah, I think below average. They're too costly and there isn't that many use cases for them right now. Cheat Death, below average in my opinion. I think there's, you know, some decks that run it. There is that fun old Murkai Cheat Death deck that could definitely do with this, and I think Cheat Death definitely has cases that it can be used versus. Yeah, you know what? It's okay. I don't think below average is harsh. Cheat Death definitely has use cases, but it's a niche spell, right? It's niche. It's good when it's used in the right deck, but it's niche. Dark Iron Miner, S+ tier. The reason Dark Iron Miner is S+ tier is because if you're not running it, you're going to lose control of your eco almost every time. He's super strong. Almost every top player is running Dark Iron Miner in some way, shape, or form. Just it's so good to just A, have it with the mine talent when you can lay mines on the bridge, but B, just have control of those gold mines. And yeah, really, really good. Troll, Darkspear Troll. I'm going to put him in S+ tier, and the only reason I'm putting him in S+ tier is you need the Big Bad Voodoo talent. Super good with the Big Bad Voodoo talent in the current meta. Very, very strong in terms of what it can bring to your team. It's 3 gold. It can basically take towers by itself, and there are a lot of good decks that are running Troll right now, so definitely very strong. I'm not going to rank Deep Breath because no one's going to have access to it apart from the Giga Whales, so I'm not going to do that. Defias Bandits, I'm putting them in the okay tier, and I feel bad doing that. No, actually, I think they can go in the very good. I'm going to try and rank these. So what you're going to see me do is I might move these around just a little bit. I'm going to try and rank these based on kind of left to right being the best on the left and the worst on the right. I think that Defias Bandits are okay. They're just unfortunately a little slow. They were so much better on the last PvP map because you could almost guarantee that you would be able to get Defias Bandits to the chest on your side of the map without there being too much interruption as long as you weren't getting unbound spammed. And the current map, it's so difficult to get your Defias Bandits, especially with the popularity of Safe Pilot, to actually take a chest, and therefore their utility drops off. But they're still a great defensive unit, even without having the utility of their pick lock talent. They're still a great defensive unit. They can still stun under tower. So I think they're still worth including. And they're 1 cost for that stun. Like I would pay 1 cost for that stun almost every time. Drake, I think Drake by itself goes in the okay tier, but obviously is very, 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 very easily sort of usable in Rend decks, but they're only really seen in Rend decks, so I can't really say that it's amazing beyond that. So yeah, I think like Drake, probably too expensive to run outside of Rend, which kind of has to keep it in that okay category. Earth Elemental, not good. The reason Earth Elemental is not good is it's armored, quite low HP for a tank, and gets absolutely evaporated by the current towers. Quillbore is a much better tank than Earth Elemental is at this current point in time. Execute, below average. I definitely think there are decks where Execute can be running, but you're giving up a slot for a spell that isn't always going to be that useful. The meta isn't really dominated by high HP targets, so you're always going to be executing things that are relatively easy to kill anyway, and so Execute, I think, doesn't really have too much of a place. I'm going to put Fire Elemental in very good, only because it works really well with the Frostwolf Shaman, and it is a resistant tank. It's good AoE clear by its own right, and it's better than it used to be, especially in this situation. Firehammer is okay. Firehammer is significantly better when the Gargoyle meta is kind of strong. Firehammer is an elemental ranged damage dealer that has Fury, stacks up much better versus tanks, and obviously is particularly good against Gargoyle. But when Gargoyle's not super meta, you're not going to see a huge amount of Firehammer. And also, they're just better ranged units. You've got to remember that you have limited ranged slots. Why would I run Firehammer when I could run a Darkspear Troll with Big Bad Voodoo? Why would I run Firehammer when I could run a Huntress? Flamewaker, not good. The reason being is that he's too easily taken out by simple units that are currently in the meta. And it's not like people are sending, like, he's good, obviously he's a good option into things like Old Murkai, but like you'd have to tech him in specifically for Old Murkai. You know, maybe I feel bad putting him in the same category as Earth Elemental. I'd probably just call him in the not good, below average category. Has his use cases, but those use cases are very niche. I'm putting Footmen in not good. The reason I'm putting Footmen in not good is because they are armored and they get obliterated by the current towers. Footmen decks in general are kind of dead, and that's the reason why we're putting Footmen in not good. Gargoyle can go into okay category. It's bad into the current towers, but as a finisher, it can still work. It can still get a couple of tower hits off. It's not the worst. If you send Gargoyle by itself versus an evenly leveled tower, it'll almost kill it before it dies. The side tower, not the base. It'll almost kill it before it dies, so it still definitely has some use. And especially in Rend decks, we can get it cheaper anyway. It kind of makes sense. Ghoul. I think Ghoul is actually very good. I think Ghoul has... I'm just going to sort of put that there. I think Ghoul is a unit that can trade actually quite well versus Huntress. It's a good Huntress distraction unit. It's very, very high value for 2 cost. Has some good talents, is a good distraction, and in general is quite a nuisance for just the value that it provides for the costing. So yeah, I think Ghoul is a pretty good unit. Is this Null Brute? Yeah, Null Brute is literal garbage. Just why would you ever run this? Even at 2 cost in a Hogger deck, like a cycle deck, maybe it fulfills the same role as Hogger. There isn't any reason to run Null Brute. I'm going to put Goblin Sappers in very good because they are still a nuisance, especially when combined with Stealth Bomb. And I'll put Stealth Bomb in very good as well. But people are starting to tech in spells to deal with goblins. You've seen me, Safe Pilot's pretty good at dealing with them. You can use Chain Lightning to deal with them. You know, I think like they're still a very good unit and they have to be respected, but they're not as strong as maybe they were, and people are starting to learn to deal with them a bit better. I might even put them a little bit further down because they're quite cheesy. This little combo is quite cheesy. Griffin Rider, another very good unit. I think a lot of people running Griffin Rider. I think it's a good 2 cost, great defensive unit. A lot of pro and top players use Griffin Rider as an excellent adaptable 2 cost tool. I think that's worth keeping in. Harpies go in the okay category. They get melted by the current towers, but there's definitely some use case for Harpies, especially when it comes to having the poison talent and tank shredding. But they're not a unit that you would classically try and run too much of in PvP. I'm going to put our old Harvest Golem friend in below average. Now, I think I still think this little man is underrated. He has a 5-second stun on death and then a 5-second stun on his second death, which is just absolutely crazy when you think about it. But it is a unit that doesn't deal a huge amount of damage, still gets obliterated by the current towers, and overall is quite slow. Slow units are not particularly good in the current meta, so I don't think it's fantastic. Holy Nova. I think Holy Nova is on the upper end of okay to very good. It's run in specific decks. I don't think it's sort of a spell that everybody's going to be wanting to run, and you won't see it used across many decks that aren't sort of Blood Mage Thanos or Jaina. Maybe a Tyrion deck, but very occasionally. But it's an okay spell. Huntress, S+ tier. No doubt about it, Huntress is S+ tier on this current update. She's resistant, she's ranged, she can solo take towers. She's practically included in every deck that's out there right now. And so I just think, yeah, Huntress is in a great spot. This thing can never even... It's so bad I can't even remember the name of the spell. Fiery blow up big spell. Too expensive. It's still too expensive. Meat Wagon in PvP, below average. Too slow, too easy to deal with. And really sieging on towers is not a massive priority. If taking that side tower was going to be a priority for a lot of decks, then you could run it, but you're never getting Meat Wagon into a position where it can really, really threaten bases often. I've seen it used, but I don't think it's fantastic. Molten Giant, going to go in the same category as the rest of the tanky armored units that are weak to elemental damage. Also just too slow. The reason I've got Abomination a bit higher is because it just has a high HP pool and doesn't necessarily rely on armored to make it tanky. Mountaineer, literal garbage. It's too expensive. Murloc Tidehunters, they are okay, and the reason I'm putting them on the upper end of okay is they are good, but obviously not runnable in every deck, and not always the right choice, but they are a good unit in the decks that they work in. Ogre Magi. I'm going to put it also in okay. I even though there is definitely decks that make use of Ogre Magi, it's... I think that... I'm going to keep it in okay. It's just very expensive. And if I want to run a 5-cost range, I'm probably running Huntress most of the time. But there is definitely use cases for Ogre Magi. I just don't think it's like... It's not a must-have in your deck, right? We're going to put old Necromancer in very good. Again, it's not usable in every single deck, and it's really, really only see it in Baron decks for the most part, but it's very good. It's still a very good unit. It's just not not absolute S+ tier. I'm going to put Mr. Old Plague Farmer in below average. I think there are people that are using it, but I just don't think it's better than some of the other Bombard units that you can run. And I think like overall, most people will be running literally anything else. Prowler. Given the abundance of Prowler in high-level decks, I think we could probably comfortably put Prowler in S+ tier. Super quick, can contest chests quickly, high HP pool, deals a lot of damage on first impact. It's good. It's a good unit. Polymorph. I think it's situational spell, but still a good spell. You can see that a lot of the spells kind of sit here. These are very good spells that are sort of used and have good use cases across a lot of decks. And I think like all of these spells can be used across a lot of decks right now. We're going to look at Quillbore in... Yeah, I think Quillbore in S+ tier. I think it's too good. It's a resistant unbound tank, and it contests chests, which is just super powerful right now, and yeah, overall very good. Blackrock Pyromancer, I'm going to put it in very good. I think it's underused right now. I think there is more use case for Blackrock Pyromancer than one would think. It's a 3-cost AoE ranged mage with Pyroblast, which can deal a huge amount of damage on first impact. So I think people are undervaluing the power of Blackrock Pyromancer right now, and I think I've seen some of it in some high tier decks. I think there's definitely more space for Blackrock Pyromancer to be used in the current meta. Raptors, I'm going to put below average. They're really only good in old Murkai decks, to be honest with you. So, yeah, can't say much more about that. Safe Pilot, I'm going to put it even above Quillbore. It's just more usable than Quillbore, and you'll see there will not be a deck on the ladder. To be honest with you, I might even put it above Huntress. There is almost never a deck on the ladder that isn't running Safe Pilot. You are at an immediate disadvantage if you are just not running Safe Pilot. Almost everyone does, and not everyone runs Huntress, so I'd almost be tempted to put it above Huntress, which I have. Frostwolf Shaman, it's a very good unit. It's unlocked a lot of decks with its talent, and I think like overall works well with Drakasas, works well with Flame Elemental, and I think it's just a good unit in spot right now. This must be Skeleton Party, and this must be Skeletons. So Skeletons are okay. They're not fantastic. They work in a why have I put Ogre Magi so high up here? I think it's probably somewhere around here. I think Skeletons work in Baron decks specifically. But otherwise, kind of meh. Skeleton Party, however, is very good. And I think it's a good win condition for a lot of decks, especially if you're running Corpse Run. So I'm going to put Skeleton Party in the very good level. Spiderlings are going in literal garbage. Stonehoof Tauren, I am going to put in S+ tier. The reason I'm putting Stonehoof Tauren in S+ tier and a little bit below Prowler is I think Prowler and Stonehoof Tauren basically do the same job. Stonehoof Tauren's a little slower than Prowler, which is why I think Prowler is preferable for chest control, but they deal with Huntress very well, both of these units. And Stonehoof Tauren maybe even more so, because if it has momentum, it can usually charge into a tank and then charge into the Huntress. So Stonehoof Tauren, I think, is just a fantastic unit at this current point in time. Going to put Vultures in literal garbage. Frostwolf Grunts, I think they're actually better than most tanks right now. But I just think that for the cost, they're not particularly viable. But I think they're better than Footmen, etc., because they don't rely on armor to make them tanky. Frostwolf Raider, I think it's okay. You can run the Saboteur talent to reduce tower damage, but it still doesn't mean that it's easily able to take towers. So, I'm not gonna read too much into it. Worgen, we're going to put in the upper end of okay, mostly because unless you're running Maiev, not many decks have got space for a Worgen. It deals with things like Huntress and Necromancer. If you place it correctly, it definitely has its value potential, but it's just not going to be an auto-include for many decks. Whereas I think that the units up here, they're much more adaptable. They're much more widely usable across decks, whereas these units are kind of like a bit more specific. Well, Pegs, we'll drop them in S+ tier. Obviously, with the Flame Burst talent, they are very, very strong. I'm trying to see if I have missed any units. Even if I have, they're not listed down here. These are obviously all the leaders. Let's just run through it. Baron, Thalnos, Cairn, Chalga. Not running deep. We're not talking about Deep Breath. Drakasath, Grom, Hogger, Jaina, Kobold, Maiev, Old Murkai, Rend, Sneed, Sylvanas, Tyrium. I think that must be all of the minis, if I'm not mistaken. And that would be my overall PvP mini tier list. I'm hoping it's helpful. If you like the content, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.